Now, guys, we will continue our discussion on previous year questions. So, in this video, I'll take up a comparison between Marx and Durkheim with respect to their theory of alienation and anomie. And this question has been already asked. So, this is a question. We see here, identify the similarities. So, it is direct, right? So, they're asking about you need to identify the similarity, you need to identify the difference between Marx's theory of alienation and Durkheim's theory of anomie. So whenever you get similarities and difference question, you can draw a table also, right? We have seen comparison between sociology and other subjects where also we draw the table. So that approach also will be looking good. But we'll start writing in paragraph. We'll talk about so how will you proceed now? So here both, in fact, are talking about the problems in modern society, or in fact, both are influential explanation of the crisis of modern society. So both are talking about what is happening in modern society, whether the theory of anomie, which is talking about normlessness, or alienation, which is again talking about estrangement, or you are not able to express your creativity and all. So both are actually talking about the crisis of modern society. Now, for Marx, it is permanent issue. You need a revolution. But for Durkheim, it's a temporary issue. And with some changes in the mode of production, you can improve. So temporary, and within the mode of production, you can have some changes and you can improve. But for Marx, it is permanent. We need the change of the mode of production, and you need to enter into a different mode of production to solve that. Okay. So first, what you need to do is you need to define what is alienation, right? So I hope you understood. So they are asking about similarities and difference between Marx and Durkheim. Now both are talking about crisis of modern society. So one line you will explain that. Now, if you look at first part, you can explain what is alienation. Definition, it's already there in your note. So estrangement from the product, right? So alienation refers to the condition in which the workers become estranged from their own labor, right? The product they create and the fellow workers, and ultimately from their own human potential and life due to the capitalist exploitation. If someone cannot express something as his own creativity, he is alienated. And we have done a detailed discussion on that. Briefly, you can write that. And then what you will do, you will have to discuss anomie. What is anomie? Anomie refers to the state of normlessness or the breakdown of social regulation, where individuals lose the moral guidance and the social integration, and that will result into kind of purposelessness or disorientation in society. So if you see, both are looks like different theories, right? If you look at it, both are theoretically different tradition, but both these concepts actually trying to explain the negative consequence of the modern industrial society of individual. So when we talk about the similarity, that is what, even though both theories are looking entirely different on the surface, but both the theories or both the concept is trying to explain what the negative consequences of modern industrial society. Okay, I'll just write modern society. So this way you will be creating that link, and then we will talk about the similarities. We'll talk about the difference. You can draw the table also. So firstly, you see what is the first similarity. Both explain the pathologies of modern society. Both Marx and Durkheim both were concerned with the harmful consequences of modernization and social integration part, if you, especially Durkheim. And he always concerned with the integration part, if you remember theory of anomie or theory of suicide and everywhere. So Marx focused on capitalist exploitation and Durkheim focused on weakening of social norms. Durkheim always focused on maintenance of social order, whereas Marx focused on exploitation part, and both argued that modern society create conditions that undermine the human well-being, right? So for Durkheim it is normlessness, for Marx it is alienation and exploitation. Now, what is the next similarity? Both emphasize disconnection and social isolation, right? So when you see the theory of alienation here, so let me talk about alienation first. How both are talking about disconnection. Alienation. So from the product of labor, so you get alienated or disconnected from the product and from the process of production, from the labor process, and from the fellow workers, the workers compartmentalized. So this is talking about, you know, the disconnection, right? And from self also, right? So this is what alienation is all about. Now, when it comes to anomie, what is that disconnection here? you'll be writing disconnection from norms, right? It's a state of normlessness, right? And collective conscience. Durkheim talks so much about collective conscience, which will be absent in a state of normlessness or during an anomie situation, and a disconnection from community life. Perfect. So this is what you can mention. Both are talking about some kind of social disintegration, some kind of social disconnection, and alienation. These four dimension anomie. Please excuse me with the language. When I'm writing with this pen, it is not proper. Now, what is the third similarity? Both are consequence of the social structure. It is the, what Marx says, it is the capitalist system which is responsible. Even the capitalist is also alienated in one way or the other, right? So, in fact, both Durkheim and Marx never blame the individuals. It is a structure. So Marx talks, or Marx in fact trace alienation to capitalist production relation. The very nature of the production process itself is like that. So in a way, capitalist is also alienated. Durkheim traces anomie to inadequate social regulation. So both are, in fact, blaming the structure of society. So the consequence, you can see both see structural reason, not just 1 minute. Okay, so now I'm not able to write it. I'll explain this. So both are seeing this as structural cause. It's not an individual failure. Now, what's the next similarity? Both explain meaninglessness, anxiety and loss of purpose. So, in fact, both are talking about individuals may feel isolated, powerless, meaninglessness, estranged, directionless, no purpose of life, like this. So both are almost similar concept, and modern institutions fail to satisfy the deeper human needs. Now, in fact, both are talking about social change. This is another similarity. So both Marx and Durkheim believe that these problems are not permanent. In fact, sorry, for Marx it is permanent, and you need a revolutionary transformation. Permanent means within that mode of production, because the very nature of the production process itself has to be changed as a solution. So social change is required, a complete revolutionary transformation, qualitative change is required, change of the mode of production is required. But Durkheim actually advocated a stronger moral regulation and social integration within the mode of production. Now remember, for Durkheim, it is temporary. Within the mode of production, you can make changes in the mode of production, in terms of moral regulation, social integration. But for Marx, change of the mode of production and the entire system has to be changed, because the very problem itself is because of the system itself, right? So both are talking about remedies through changes, but for Marx, it's a revolutionary change of the mode of production. Durkheim, change in the mode of production in terms of moral regulation and social integration. Now, you also need to talk about this. This is a comparison, guys. It's a very easy one. You can see dimension and alienation and anomie. So, thinker, you can draw this table, Marx, Durkheim. Tradition, if you see, conflict perspective, functionalist perspective. Cause, if you see, this is because of exploitation. This is normlessness, very simple, self-explanatory. Focus, if you see, Marx focus on economy, and here it is on social norms and morality. Unit here is a worker, and here it is a society. Solution, the revolution and regulation. This is change of mode of production, revolutionary, and this is change in the mode of production in terms of moral regulation and social integration. Perfect. Now, okay, difference also we need to, but before that, let me also talk about some contemporary relevance, or after difference you can write. See, both concepts very important. You need to mention this: gig economy, corporate burnout. Everywhere you can, whenever you get a question on Marx, also any question comparison to Marx, also you can write this. Social media isolation, that is anomie, right? And then that is alienation also, and consumerism, mental health crisis, youth unemployment. All these you can bring in, you can connect it, you can add as the contemporary relevance. Okay, now comes to the uh, differences. So difference one is treating as economic problem, right? The other is considering as moral problem or society-centered moral problem. And one is considering as worker-centered, the other is society-centered, which is already discussed here. So this is the same difference also. You'll write one is conflict perspective, other is functionalist perspective. One is talking about exploitation, other is talking about normlessness. One is talking about economy, one other is talking about morality. One is talking about worker-centered, the other is society-centered. One is talking about change of mode of production, the other is talking about change in mode of production. So we have discussed the similarity. Now we discuss the differences also. I hope this is very clear. Revolution versus reform within. Labor as creativity versus labor as integration. Now, alienation today, this is what I mentioned about the contemporary examples which you can give, that is gig economy, corporate burnout, social media isolation, consumerism, mental health crisis, youth unemployment, platform capitalism, and all those. Digital capitalism, digital labor, social media loneliness, mental health crisis. So this, if you can connect it with alienation, this you can connect it with, in fact, both are connected with both, but separately, if you want to mention, this way you can do. And you can also talk about contemporary relevance of Giddens, Bowman, and Beck. We have done multiple discussion on this. So, see, alienation is fundamentally a problem of capitalism, right? It's the problem of the structure. Now, workers do not own anything. Workers do not own the means of production, and labor becomes a commodity, and human creativity, because of that, it is subordinated to the profit. Now, you create an object, that is your creativity, but you cannot express that as your creativity. Because of that, you are alienated, and the object that you created becomes the master of the subject which created that object. And that's why Marx states that in capitalism, the relation between object and subject inverse, and object become the master of subject. So consequently, the workers became cogs in the machine. For example, this factory worker is producing smartphone. I've discussed this example many times. Have no control over the production process nor the product. You think about an iPhone, which may be his dream to buy a phone. The very phone he produced, he may not even be able to buy an iPhone. Okay, now anomie. Anomie is a clear state of normlessness. That's a problem of normlessness. I know alienation, problem of capitalism and the structure. Anomie, problem of normlessness. So Durkheim, what he is arguing is that the rapid social change, that weakens the collective norms, the solidarity, the collective conscience, etc. So when the traditional institution fail to regulate the desires of the modern world, what can happen? The expectations become unlimited. The individuals experience that frustration and the social instability increase. People don't follow the traditional norms also. For example, the economic recession that produce feeling of uncertainty and purposelessness, and that contribute to higher rates of suicides. Anomie, suicide. Okay, so we discussed already everything. Now, alienation today, you can add these example. Gig workers, dependent on the digital platform, digital capitalism, digital labor, then the corporate burnout you can mention, the algorithmic management, and remote work isolation, platform capitalism. Coming to anomie, you can talk about even the family breakdowns, right? And social media driven anxiety and loneliness, consumer culture, rising mental health disorders, and all those. So Marx helped to explain the economic estrangement on one side. Durkheim talk about social disorientation on the other side. So that's again the fundamental difference. Now, before we conclude the content, you need to write the criticism. You know this Marx economic determinism, general criticism, and neglect of culture, and criticism of Durkheim, neglect of power and inequality. So what's the limitation of Marx here? Overemphasis on economic factors, neglect the culture and its values, and many workers experience job satisfaction despite capitalism. Similarly, Durkheim, if you want to criticize, you can say underestimate power and inequality, assumes equality, assumes everyone need to follow social collective conscience, and social harmony is an unrealistic expectation, assume consensus where conflict exists. In fact, the present world is full of conflict, right? And he also ignore exploitation and class domination. So the contemporary sociologists, now here is where you can bring them, and you can mention, for example, Sigmund Bauman and Anthony Giddens. They have shown how modern society simultaneously generate both alienation and anomie. So that way you'll be making the link and you'll be bringing the other thinkers. You'll be writing the answer. So still towards the end, you can say, despite their theoretical framework, Marx theory of alienation and Durkheim theory of anomie, they share some common concern with the adverse consequences of modernity. Both are talking about the adversities of modernity, right? The crisis happened because of modernization and modern society, especially industrial capitalism. Alienation highlight the economic estrangement which is produced by the capitalist mode of production or the relations of production, whereas anomie emphasize the breakdown of normative regulation and social integration. So on one side, it is the economic aspect, the other side, it is the social aspect, and together they provide, they are not contradictory, they are complementary. In fact, a complementary framework for understanding isolation, insecurity, and loss of meaning in the contemporary society. So social isolation is also there, economic isolation is also there. So together, this act as complementary rather than contradictory. Right? So what could be a sociological conclusion for you? If Marx explained why individuals become strangers to their work, Durkheim explained why they become strangers to society. So together, alienation and anomie, this remain two of the most powerful diagnoses of the human condition, especially in the modern industrial society. So this is how a mature sociological answer should look like. And I hope yeah, I hope so. You got the understanding of this. So guys, see you in the next video. Thank you so much.